The last hope. The great council hall of the Velari people stood silent. Where once proud voices filled the air, now only fear and doubt remained. Outside the crystal walls, the twin suns of their homeworld burned low in the sky. The enemy was coming. The Drakthar had broken every defense, shattered every fleet, and now they marched toward the heart of the Velari Empire. Council leader Syra lowered her head, her hands trembling. "We have lost," she whispered. Around the great table, the elders sat frozen. No one spoke. No one had an answer. Their armies were broken. Their allies had abandoned them. Their cities burned one by one. All that remained was the capital and the last. Few million Velari hiding behind walls that would not stand much longer. Elder Tora slammed his fist against the table. "We must not give up," he shouted. "We will fight to the last breath." Syra looked at him with hollow eyes. "And when we are all dead, who will remember us?" she asked. No one answered. Then Elder Vren, the oldest among them, raised his voice. "There is another way," he said slowly. The others turned to him. "What way?" demanded Tora. "The fleets are destroyed. The warriors are dead." Vren's voice shook with age but carried weight. "The humans." At the word, the council stirred. Anger, pride, fear. The Velari had always looked down on humans. They were seen as wild, unpredictable, dangerous, useful in small things maybe, but not to be trusted with something as great as saving a civilization. "You suggest we beg them for help?" Tora spat. "Not beg," Vren said. "Call." Syra sat straighter. A cold hope flickered in her heart. "There is one," Vren continued. "A human who once fought alongside us. A warrior who turned the tide of battles before. One we cast aside because we feared him." Elder Yana narrowed her eyes. "Ethan Cross," she said. Vren nodded. "A name from a forgotten war. A human who had fought with fire in his heart and genius in his mind. But after the war, when peace came, the Velari had sent him away. His ways were too wild. His choices too unpredictable. He was a danger to their order. They had not needed him then. They needed him now." Syra stood slowly. "If there is even a chance," she said, "we must try." Tora rose to his feet. "This is madness," he barked. "To trust a human with our last breath? Better madness than extinction," Syra said softly. The council argued long into the night. Pride fought with fear. Old wounds reopened. But as the suns sank below the horizon and the stars claimed the sky, the decision was made. A message was sent. Across them, broken channels and shattered satellites. A simple, desperate call. To Ethan Cross. "The Velari request your aid. We are on the brink of defeat. You are our last hope." The message sped through the stars, past dead worlds and burned stations, to a lonely moon at the edge of forgotten space. There, in a small, battered ship buried in dust, a man opened his eyes. His hair was gray now, his face marked by old scars. He had once been Captain Ethan Cross of Earth's finest fleet. Now he was a man with no home, no command, and no loyalty to anyone. He read the message slowly. Then he laughed. A hard, bitter sound. "Now you remember me," he muttered. He leaned back in his chair, staring up at the cracked ceiling. He should ignore it. He owed them nothing. They had cast him aside like broken metal. But then he thought of the Velari people. Not the proud council, but the children he had seen laughing in the city streets, the farmers tending silver fields, the young warriors who had fought and bled beside him. They would die too if he stayed silent. Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment, he let himself feel the old fire burning in his chest, the part of him that had never stopped fighting no matter the cost. He stood slowly, bones aching but spirit strong. He strapped on his old armor. He checked his weapons, dusty but still deadly. He powered up the engines of his ship, listening as they roared back to life. The screen blinked with the coordinates of the Velari capital. He smiled grimly. One last ride, he said to himself. And with that he launched into the dark, toward a world that had once betrayed him, and now needed him more than ever. This was not about pride. This was not about forgiveness. This was about survival, about honor, about doing what was right when no one else could. Ethan Cross was coming, and for the Valeri, it would be either salvation or the final, glorious fall. The human chosen. The journey back to Valeri space was long and dangerous. Ethan Cross sat alone in the pilot seat of his old, patched-up ship, staring at the endless stars outside the cracked window. Every vibration of the engine, every flicker of failing lights reminded him of how much time had passed. He had once commanded fleets. Now he flew alone in a ship barely holding together. Still he smiled. Something inside him, something buried for too long, stirred awake. Not hatred, not revenge. Something harder to define. Duty. The Valeri had not been wrong to fear him. Humans were different. Humans did not bow to destiny, they fought it, they shaped it, and now, for reasons even he could not fully explain, Ethan was answering a call from those who had once betrayed him. His ship reached the edge of Valeri space. No grand fleets guarded the borders. No warning beacons flashed. Only silence. The enemy had torn through everything. Ethan's hand hovered over the controls. He could still turn back, let them fall, let them taste the cost of pride. But he didn't. He pushed forward. The coordinates from the message led him to a hidden base, deep underground, buried beneath mountains scorched by war. He landed his ship on a cracked landing pad, engines coughing one last time before falling silent. The entrance to the base opened with a hiss. Armed Valeri guards stood waiting. They watched him carefully, their weapons ready but not raised. A figure stepped forward. Leader Sierra, her once proud, robes were torn and stained. Her face was lined with worry and exhaustion. She looked smaller than he remembered, more real. "Captain Ethan Cross," she said, voice steady but strained. He said nothing. He only nodded. She led him through the base, past soldiers too young and too old, their eyes hollow with fear. The walls shook occasionally with distant impacts. The enemy was close. Very close. In the council chamber, the surviving leaders gathered. Some glared at Ethan with open distrust. Others looked at him with quiet desperation. Sierra stood before them and spoke. "We stand at the edge of extinction," she said. "We have called you because we have no other choice." Ethan looked around the room, letting the silence stretch. He could feel their tension, their shame, their fear. Good. Fear could be useful. He stepped forward, his voice calm, sharp. "If I agree to help," he said, "I will lead. No council, no debates, no second-guessing." Murmurs of anger filled the chamber. "You would rule us like a tyrant?" Elder Torah snapped. Ethan's gaze pinned him to the spot. "You asked for a fighter, not a politician," he said. "If you want survival, you do it my way." Sierra raised a hand, silencing the arguments. "We agree," she said quietly. Torah turned on her, furious. "You would hand our fate to a human?" "I would hand it to anyone who can save us," she replied. Ethan's mouth twitched into a humorless smile. "Good," he said. "Then here are my orders." The council leaned in, expecting plans for walls, defenses, weapons, but Ethan's first command shocked them. "Evacuate the civilians," he said. "Empty the cities." The council exploded in protest. "Abandon our homes? Leave our sacred halls? What madness is this?" Ethan let them shout. Then he spoke, low and hard. "You have already lost your homes. You just don't know it yet." The words cut through their pride like knives. "The Drakthar are coming with forces you can't fight. If you stay, you die. If you move, you survive." "Survive to do what?" Torah demanded. "To fight smarter," Ethan said. "To hit them where it hurts. To win a war they think they have already finished." Silence fell, deep and heavy. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then slowly Sierra nodded. "Begin the evacuation," she ordered. Ethan turned without another word and left the chamber. He had work to do. Outside, in the corridors filled with frightened faces, he saw the future of the Valeri people, not the council, not the warriors, but the children, the mothers, the builders, the dreamers. They would be the ones he fought for, not because they were Velari, not because they deserved it, but because they were alive, and because somewhere deep inside, Ethan Cross was still a soldier who believed that life, any life, was worth fighting for. He looked up at the cracked ceiling of the base, feeling the distant tremble of enemy cannons. Time was short, but hope was still alive, and as long as hope lived, the fight was not over. Not yet. Terms of the impossible. The evacuation began at dawn. Massive ships, battered and half-broken, lifted from the ruins of cities. Families, carrying only what they could hold, moved like rivers through the ancient streets. Soldiers lined the roads, faces grim, watching as the people they had sworn to protect left everything behind. Ethan stood at the highest point of the old city, overlooking it all. His arms were crossed, his jaw set. He had seen many worlds fall, but this time, he would not let it end in ashes. Commander Syra joined him, her robes whipping in the cold wind. "They hate you," she said quietly. Ethan didn't look at her. "Good," he replied. "They think you are a coward." Ethan gave a short laugh. "I've been called worse." Syra studied him carefully. "Do you truly believe we can win?" Ethan turned to her then, his eyes hard. "I don't believe in winning," he said. "I believe in surviving. And survival is the first victory." She nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words. Below, the last evacuation ships roared into the sky. The city was empty now. Only soldiers and death remained. Ethan turned away from the view. "Now," he said, "we fight." He gathered the remaining commanders in the old war room, a place thick with dust and forgotten dreams. Maps of the region lay across a broken table. Ethan spoke clearly, his voice sharp as steel. "The Drakthar believe we are broken. They believe they can walk into this city and take it without resistance." He smiled grimly. "We are going to let them believe it." He pointed to the city gates. "We will leave traps, bombs, hidden weapons." Pointed to the narrow streets. "We will guide them into the heart of the city." He pointed to the main tower, the power station. "And then we will destroy it all." Gasps filled the room. "But our history," one officer began. "Your history will be dead if the Drakthar take it," Ethan cut him off. "Better ashes than slavery." No one spoke after that. They listened. They learned. They obeyed. For hours, the soldiers worked under Ethan's orders. Mines were buried under the streets. Buildings were rigged to collapse. Energy traps were hidden under crumbling walls. When the Drakthar came, they would find a beautiful, deadly lie. Ethan worked alongside them. He laid traps. He carried explosives. He fought the exhaustion that clawed at his mind. Because he knew. Every second mattered. Every choice could mean the difference between life and death. When night fell, Ethan stood with Syra in the empty grand square. The city was ready. The final battlefield. "You still trust us?" Syra said, almost surprised. Ethan looked at her, tired but sure. "I don't trust councils, I don't trust speeches." He pointed to the stars above. "But I trust survival." Syra smiled faintly. "And if we fall?" Ethan shrugged. "Then we make sure they fall with us." Distant thunder rolled across the mountains. The Drakthar were coming. Their ships lit up the night sky like a second sunrise. Syra's face grew pale. "They are more than we expected." Ethan smiled grimly. "Good." She gave him a puzzled look. "Overconfidence kills faster than any bullet," he said. The ground shook under their feet. It had begun. Ethan turned to the gathered soldiers, Velari warriors who had nothing left to lose. "Hold the lines," he ordered. "Hit them where it hurts. Make them bleed for every step." They raised their weapons in silent salute. No grand speeches, no promises of glory, only the cold, sharp determination to survive. Ethan strapped on his old battle gear, the human flag still stitched across his shoulder. He drew his battered rifle, its surface scarred from 100 battles. As he loaded the first round, He whispered to himself. One last fight. The enemy ships landed on the far plains. The ground cracked under their massive weight. From the rooftops, the Valari watched, hearts pounding. In the streets, traps waited like sleeping wolves. Ethan climbed the main tower, setting the final detonator at the power station's core. He looked down at the empty city, the maze of death he had built. He did not smile. He did not cry. He simply waited. Because war was not about hope. War was about will. And tonight, the will of a single human would be tested against the might of an empire. The secret strategy, the first. Drakthar soldiers entered the city at dawn. Their black armor reflected the weak sunlight. They moved like a wave, slow and heavy, confident that nothing could stop them. They found empty streets, silent houses, no resistance. The Drakthar commanders laughed among themselves. They fled, one said. Cowards, said another. They spread through the city, marching toward the grand square where the Valari Council had once stood proud. But every step they took was a step into the trap. On the rooftops, Ethan watched through, broken glass, calm and patient. He held a small detonator in his hand, his thumb hovering over the trigger. Not yet. Not yet. He had planned this moment carefully. The Drakthar were strong, brutal, fearless. But they were also arrogant. They believed victory was already theirs, and that was their weakness. Ethan whispered into his radio, "Wait for my signal." Hidden in the ruins, Valari snipers aimed their rifles. Explosive charges were ready under the cobblestones. Electric traps were hidden inside the lampposts. Poisonous gas pods were planted in the narrow alleys. The city itself had become a weapon, and the Drakthar had walked right into its jaws. Ethan's eyes narrowed as the Drakthar reached the center of the city. They raised their banners in triumph. Their leader, a giant creature with dark red armor, stood on the old council steps and roared, "This world is ours," he shouted. Ethan pressed the trigger. The first explosion shattered the air. A building to the left of the Drakthar column collapsed, raining stone and fire. Before they could react, the streets under their feet erupted. Mines exploded in perfect sequence, tearing through their ranks. Panic spread. Drakthar soldiers scrambled for cover, shouting orders, but there was no safe place. The snipers opened fire from the rooftops, picking off commanders and heavy units. Hidden energy traps activated, disabling weapons and vehicles. Smoke and dust filled the air. Chaos reigned. Ethan moved, quickly. He slid down a broken stairwell, leading a small squad of Valari soldiers through hidden tunnels. They emerged behind the main Drakthar force, attacking from the rear. Blades flashed. Plasma bolts tore through the confusion. The Drakthar fought back fiercely, but they were trapped. Cut off. Confused. For the first time in the war, they were losing, and they didn't know why. High above the battlefield in the main tower, Sierra watched the battle unfold on the old surveillance screens. She could barely believe her eyes. "They are falling back," she whispered. Ethan's voice crackled through the radio. "Not yet," he said. "Let them think they have a way out." She understood instantly. Another layer of the trap. The Drakthar forces began retreating toward the city gates. They thought they could regroup outside. They thought they could escape. They didn't know the exits were rigged with even bigger explosives. Ethan led his squad back through the tunnels, dodging collapsing walls and burning debris. He moved with purpose. He had fought too many battles to believe in easy victories. There was always a price. And today, he was ready to pay it. The Drakthar reached the gates. They charged forward, desperate and furious, and then the ground opened beneath them. Massive charges hidden deep under the foundations exploded with a roar that shook the mountains. The gate towers collapsed, crushing hundreds. The survivors staggered back, trapped inside the burning city, and from every corner the Valari rose. Warriors, snipers, engineers, even farmers who had once fled now returned with weapons in hand. A roar rose from the Valari ranks, not fear, not desperation, but hope. For the first time in years, they saw the enemy bleed. For the first time, they believed they could win. Ethan climbed onto the rubble of a fallen building. He raised his rifle high, and across the battlefield, thousands of Valari shouted his name. Ethan, Ethan, the human who had once been cast out, the human who had become their last hope. The secret strategy was simple. Let the enemy believe they had already won. Let them grow fat and lazy, then strike when they were weakest. And now, under the broken skies, the Valari struck with all the fury of a world that refused to die. Betrayal within. The battle for the city raged on. Smoke filled the air. The ground shook under the weight of collapsing towers and burning vehicles. And yet, the Valari were winning. Under Ethan's command, they pushed the Drakthar back street by street, inch by inch. For the first time in a long time, hope returned to their hearts. But hope was a fragile thing, and betrayal waited in its shadow. Inside the old command center, hidden deep within the city's foundations, a small group of Valari leaders gathered in secret. Their faces were twisted, with fear and pride. Elder Tora stood among them, voice low and urgent. The human must not be allowed to take full credit for our survival, he said. Our people must rule themselves. But he is saving us, one of them whispered. Tora's eyes hardened. He is saving us now, he said. But what happens after, when we rebuild? Will he become our ruler? The others shifted uneasily. They had lived too long with their pride to easily bow, even in the face of death. Tora continued, voice dripping poison. The Drakthar will listen. They hate the human even more than we do. If we offer them a deal, if we hand over Ethan Cross, they may spare the rest of us. Gasps filled the room. It is madness, someone hissed. It is survival, Tora said coldly. And slowly, one by one, they agreed. Their fear was greater than their honor, their pride greater than their loyalty. They sent a secret signal through broken channels, a message to the Drakthar commanders, a message that promised betrayal. High above the city, in the main tower, Ethan studied the battlefield through his scope. Something felt wrong. The enemy had paused. They were not fighting as hard now. It was as if they were waiting. He switched channels on his communicator, listening in on scattered frequencies. Then he heard it, a coded signal. Not human. Not Drakthar. Valari. His eyes narrowed. He decoded the message quickly. It spoke of coordinates, of surrender, of him. Ethan's jaw tightened. So this is how it ends, he muttered. He had expected betrayal once, but a small part of him had hoped. No matter. He keyed his communicator. Sira, he said, voice calm. Yes, Captain? Her voice crackled back. Meet me at the central square. Bring only those you trust with your life. Why, what's wrong? Just move, Ethan said. He cut the channel. He gathered his rifle, his sidearm, and a few small devices from his belt. Then he moved, through burning alleys, across rubble-strewn streets, toward the heart of the city. The Drakthar had begun advancing again, slower this time. Waiting. Hunting. At the edge of the old council square, Ethan saw them, a group of Valari leaders standing nervously. Tora was among them, and near them, hidden in the shadows, Drakthar soldiers crouched, weapons ready. A trap. They planned to hand him over. Ethan didn't hesitate. He activated one of the small devices on his belt, a pulse grenade designed to disable electronics in a wide area. He tossed it into the shadows. It exploded with a silent flash. The Drakthar soldiers stumbled, their weapons dead in their hands. Ethan moved like a storm. He dropped 2 Drakthar with clean shots. He tackled Tora to the ground before he could call for help. The other traitors scattered like leaves in the wind. Syra and her loyal soldiers arrived. Moments later, weapons raised. They quickly captured the surviving Drakthar and the betrayers. Tora struggled under Ethan's knee, spitting curses. You would doom us all for your pride, Ethan said coldly. Tora sneered. Better to die free than live under a human's rule. Ethan's face showed no anger, only deep, tired sadness. "You were never free," he said. "You were just too proud to see your chains." He stood, pulling Tora to his feet. "Take them to the cells," he told Sira. She nodded grimly. The battle was not over, but now the true enemy was clear. Fear, pride, division. Ethan turned back to the battlefield, his heart heavy. Trust had been broken, but the mission remained. Save as many as possible, no matter the cost, no matter the betrayal. Because in the end, survival was not about purity. It was about will, and Ethan Cross still had will to fight. The final stand, the final battle had begun. The Drakthar, furious after their failed trap, threw everything they had at the city. Wave after wave of armored soldiers, giant war machines that crushed streets under their heavy steps, airships that rained fire from the skies. The Velari, led by Ethan Cross, stood their ground. There was no retreat now, no more plans, only fight, only survive. Ethan moved through the ruined streets like a ghost, shouting orders, pulling wounded soldiers to safety, setting last-minute traps. His armor was cracked, his body bruised, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. On the main wall, Commander Sira rallied the defenders. "Hold the lines," she shouted. "For our homes, for our future." The Velari answered her with a roar, not with fear, but with courage. Ethan climbed to the top of the shattered central tower, the highest point still standing. From there, he could see the whole battlefield. The enemy forces were endless. The city was falling apart, but he smiled grimly. They had made it further than anyone had believed possible. He tapped his communicator. "Maya," he called to the old engineer hidden in the tunnels below. "Ready," her voice crackled back. Ethan checked the detonator strapped to his wrist. The final trap, the last card. If they could not hold the city, they would deny it to the Drakthar, forever. He watched as the first enemy war machine reached the grand square. Its legs crushed ancient statues, its cannons pointed toward the Velari lines. Ethan took a deep breath. "Not yet," he whispered to himself. More Drakthar poured into the city, infantry, tanks, air support. The defenders fell back, step by step, bleeding but fighting. Ethan waited. His finger hovered over the detonator. "Closer," he muttered. "Closer." The Drakthar surged into the center. Victory seemed certain for them now. The Velari defenders formed a final line at the base of the tower, broken shields and tired faces standing firm. Ethan watched them, the people he had sworn to protect. The people who had once feared him, hated him, now trusted him with their lives. He smiled sadly. "Good enough," he said. Then he pressed the button. The ground beneath the Drakthar army exploded. Massive charges buried deep under the square, and streets ignited with a thunderous roar. Fire and earth erupted into the sky. War machines toppled like broken toys. Soldiers were thrown into the air like leaves in a storm. The city shook, walls crumbled, towers fell. For a moment, it felt like the world was ending. Ethan was thrown back by the shockwave, landing hard among broken stones. He lay still for a moment, gasping for air. Then he forced himself up. Around him, the battlefield had changed. The enemy was broken, scattered, confused. The Velari rallied with a mighty shout, charging into the chaos. They struck the Drakthar from all sides, cutting them down before they could recover. In the smoke and ruin, Ethan fought beside them. Every step a battle, every breath a gift. He led a small group straight toward the enemy command post. The Drakthar leaders, once so proud, now scrambled to escape. Ethan did not let them. One by one, they fell. By blade. By bullet, by fire. Hours later, when the sun rose over the shattered city, silence fell. Not the silence of death, the silence of victory. The Velari stood among the ruins, bruised, bloody but alive. The Drakthar had fled, defeated, broken. Ethan leaned on his rifle, exhausted beyond words. Sira approached him, her armor scorched, her face lined with tears and dirt. She dropped to one knee before him, bowing her head. Slowly, one by one, the Valari followed. The human who had been cast out, the human who had been called a danger, had become their savior. Ethan looked at them, his heart heavy. He had not fought for glory. He had fought because it was right. Because when no one else stood, he would. Because that was what it meant to be human. He gave a tired, crooked smile. "Get up," he said. "We have a world to rebuild." And, under the broken sky, among the ruins of a great war, the Valari rose. Not as slaves, not as victims, but as survivors, as a people reborn by the courage of one human who refused to surrender. The human legacy weeks passed after the final battle. The fires died. The smoke cleared. The city, though broken, still stood. Life slowly returned to the streets where death had ruled. Children played among the ruins. Families rebuilt shattered homes with bare hands and stubborn hearts. And through it all, Ethan Cross stayed quiet. He refused medals. He refused titles. He refused to sit in the new council that rose from the ashes. He worked with the builders, repairing walls. He trained young Valari, teaching them not just how to fight, but how to survive. He became a part of the city he had saved, not as a ruler, but as a guardian. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Commander Sira found Ethan sitting on the edge of the great wall, staring at the stars. She sat beside him without a word. For a long time, they watched the sky. Finally, Sira spoke. "You saved us," she said. Ethan shrugged. "You saved yourselves," he replied. She shook her head. "No. Without you, we would have been dust." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe you just needed someone to remind you who you were." Sira looked at him carefully. "Then let us honor you properly." Ethan frowned. "I don't need statues," he said. "No," she agreed. "But the truth must be remembered." She stood and faced him fully. "You were the blade we had forgotten we needed. You were the fire that refused to go out. You are part of us now. Your name will be taught to our children. Your courage will become part of our songs." Ethan looked down at his rough hands. The scars, the blood, the memories. "I am just a man," he said softly. "No," Sira said. "You are more." Later, in the rebuilt central square, the Valari gathered. No grand speeches, no royal ceremonies. Just simple words, simple thanks. Ethan stood before them, uncomfortable in the center of so much attention. The elders, the soldiers, the children, all lifted their hands in salute, not out of duty, out of respect, out of love. Ethan nodded once, a quiet acceptance. Then he turned and walked away from the crowd, leaving the spotlight behind. He returned to the broken walls, to the rebuilding homes, to the people he had fought for. He lived among them, not above them. And slowly over the years, he became a legend. Stories of the human who saved. A dying world spread across the stars, but to Ethan, it was never about stories. It was about moments. A child's laughter in a safe street, a mother's tears as she hugged her son, a farmer planting seeds in soil no longer poisoned by war. These were the victories he fought for, not medals, not glory. Life, hope, future, and, when Ethan grew old, sitting once more on the high walls watching the stars, he smiled. He had no regrets, because he had proven a simple truth. Human strength was not just in muscles or weapons. It was in the heart, in the stubborn refusal to give up, in the endless belief that even in the darkest times, there was always something worth saving, something worth fighting for. And long after he was gone, the Valari remembered. They sang songs of a human who came when no one else would, who fought when no one else dared, who saved not just a city, but a spirit. The spirit of hope, the spirit of survival, the spirit of humanity. and among the stars where old wounds slowly healed. Ethan Cross became more than a name. He became a legacy. Forever,